is going to be thing number 3, about 3 things everybody should know about Australia. 3 things everybody should know about Australia. Okay, and I'm going to make you a little bit more active today in doing this. First of all, though, I want to set the stage. So I'm going to do the share screen thing. All right, and here's thing number 3 for you to know about Australia. Australia's isolation was significant both in actual distance and in separation from civilization, so that both its language and its biogeography evolved in a unique way. So we're going to look at 2 aspects of this isolation today. And we're going to see how distance is involved, but also in a little different aspect, distance as separation, not necessarily just in miles, for instance. So we want to see about language and about biogeography. Okay, so I'm going to start with language now, looking at Australian language. And to do that, I'm going to ask you some questions for you to put your answer in the chat to start. So first of all, it's going to be some matching. On the left side are some Australian words, and on the right side are their meanings, but I've shuffled the meanings up so they're not just straight across from their actual word. So we're going to ask, what do these things mean? Here we go. So in the chat, put your answer. What do you think arvo means? Is it a large male kangaroo, an ex-convict, afternoon, or car accident? Just put your response in the chat. Again, we don't worry about getting things right or wrong in the chat. It's a way to get immediate feedback and so forth. So 5 seconds. All right, did you put down afternoon? Arvo means afternoon. Okay, next, bingle. Bingle does not mean afternoon, but does it mean then large male kangaroo, ex-convict, or car accident? Again, put your answer in the chat. 10 seconds. Okay, did you put down car accident? Car accident. Bingle is a car accident. So if you had a bingle in the arvo, you had a car accident in the afternoon. Okay, there's only 2 left. So Derwenter. Is a Derwenter a large male kangaroo or an ex-convict? Make your choice in the chat. 10 seconds. All right, Derwenter is an ex-convict. All right, and that means we only have 1 left. So of course then, Boomer is a large male kangaroo. Okay, so Australian, this language seems like it's somewhat familiar, perhaps, but a little puzzling at times too. All right, we're going to follow up on this right now by doing a little group work. So I'm going to put you into breakout rooms and give you a set of words and a set of meanings. And I want you in the breakout to discuss those and decide what means what. Okay, what means what? Then we'll come back into the main room and see if we know the answers. So I'm right now going to put in the chat 5 verbs and then 5 meanings. And again, they're going to be mixed up. So I want you to take the chat there with you to the breakout rooms and match them up. All right, so I'm going to put the breakout rooms together right now. And let's see here. We need to have, yeah, that should work. There'll be 3 or 4 people in a breakout room. I'll bring you back after a few minutes. Hey, take the chat and match things up. If you're puzzled or have any questions, just have someone pop out of the group and ask me a question and pop back in. Here we go. Join the group.
Professor Joe, I need to be in room 1 with Jason.
Martha needs to be in group 1. Yes, let me move you, Martha, to group 1. Let's see. There.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, everybody will progressively be coming back to the main room now. The breakout rooms will close automatically in 30 seconds. We'll wait for everyone to return. Okay, I think everybody's back. Yeah, so how are you doing? Are you speaking Australian? Well, let's take a look at the first 5 here, the verbs. If you are speaking Australian well, that means you can strine. Strine means to speak Australian. Okay, another one, Captain Cook. That's a curious one, I think. But I remember Captain James Cook. We've talked about him and the exploration of Australia, especially his work on the east side of Australia that spurred Britain to colonize. So what did that guy do, Captain Cook? Well, he sailed all around the world, and he's always doing what? He's always taking a look. So to Captain Cook is to have a look. Get a Guernsey is to be selected for the team. I think of it like getting a jersey that makes you an official member of the team. Larry is to be flashily dressed, maybe a little over the top a bit. And then white ant. This is an interesting concept. To criticize something to deter someone from buying it. Maybe it's your competition. Maybe you think you make a better hamburger, so you criticize the hamburger joint down the street, hoping that a customer won't buy theirs, but will buy yours. Australians call that white anting. Yes. All right, we've got to start now. So now I'm going to give you 5 words for people. 5 words for people. And again, their corresponding meanings. So we're going to repeat our procedure. I'm going to put this in the chat right now. There they are. I'm going to put you back in breakout rooms. I believe it's going to be the same matchup, the same setting. So here we go. Go back to the rooms. Match up these words for people. Yes, come on back in. And indeed, the same procedure will happen here. Everybody will be coming back in a few moments. Okay, everybody's coming back into the room. Hey, are you straining well yet? Maybe? Well, let's take a look at these words, and I'm going to go back to sharing my screen to take a peek at these words. All right, there's Captain Cook. So we remember Captain Cook now means to take a look. Drongo. There's a number of birds in Australia that are called drongo. This is one type of them. It's the spangled drongo. Bonus fact, there is a fascinating board game called Wingspan. My wife and I have played this almost every evening of the pandemic. Yes, so several hundred times now. And it has lots of information about birds, but a very clever board game strategy setup. It's really interesting. Anyway, one of the birds in the game is indeed this bird, the spangled drongo. But the further story here is that a man named his horse race, man named his race horse Drongo. Maybe thinking of the birds, maybe thinking the horse had a similar pattern on its coat like this, the spangled drongo, something. Anyway, the man named his racehorse Drongo. And then this turned out to be like the worst racehorse of all time. It seemed that the horse had no ambition. The horse seemed stupid. The horse didn't want to run. The horse run in the wrong direction. It was terrible. And soon everybody learned about this incredibly lousy racehorse named Drongo. And so now Drongo means fool. So if you want to insult your Australian friend for doing something stupid, you can call that friend Drongo. And that's a little story about how that word got into the Australian English. What else? Well, Jillaroo. Jillaroo is the ranch hand, a female ranch hand, works on the ranch. Maybe it's a sheep ranch, maybe it's a cattle ranch, whatever. She works on the ranch, Jillaroo. Can you imagine then what the word is for the man who does the same thing? Jillaroo and Jackaroo. Yes, Jack and Jill become Jackaroo and Jillaroo. Yes. All right, so that's your female cattle ranch hand. And then Sheila, including, well, maybe the singer Sheila E. on the left there. Sheila is, of course, just she, just a woman, which means your mate is not your woman necessarily. It's your friend. It's your pal. Hey, good day, mate. Yes. And that leaves Kiwi. So Kiwi then is the New Zealander. And generally that's a fun name. It's not an insult. It's a fun name, nickname for people from New Zealand. All right, the next round is food and drink. Food and drink. Let's see what we can come up with here. I'm going to put it in the chat. There we go. And send you back to the rooms. Here we go. We're on our way back. 30 seconds until the room closes automatically. Okay, how are you straining now? Did I make you hungry? Have you had breakfast? Well, of course, in Australian, that would be brekkie. That's pretty straightforward. Brekkie is breakfast. So I had hot oatmeal this morning, some toast with kumquat jam. Yes, kumquat jam on it, and some hot tea for my breakfast. I did not have a snag for breakfast. Did you have a snag for breakfast? Some people do. That's a sausage. Snag is a sausage. All right. Did you wash your breakfast down with amber? I doubt it, because most people don't have beer for breakfast. A number of beers do look that color, right? Amber is a color that many beers, not all, but many beers have that color. All right. And so then let's see. Barbie, you probably didn't make breakfast on the Barbie because that's the barbecue, unless you're giving me a raw prawn, because that would be a lie. If you say you had breakfast on the Barbie this morning, I think that's a raw prawn, a lie. Okay, so that was food and drink. We move on to places now. Places. There it is in the chat. Here we go. Did you have an amber for brekkie today? Well, I think not, but could you buy one at some of these places? Maybe so. We'll find out which ones in less than 30 seconds now. Okay, everybody's back now. So yes, 3 of these places are places where you could purchase an amber. Maybe the most obvious one is the bottle shop. The bottle shop where you can buy, well, what can you get in bottles? Often it's some kind of alcohol. Yes. So the off-sale liquor store is your bottle shop. Okay. The convenience store, could you buy an amber there? Well, probably, but you could also buy other beverages, right? Well, milk. Yes. A milk bar is your convenience store. Could you buy an amber at a hotel? If it has a restaurant in the United States, you'd say, yeah, we probably could, maybe could. Not every hotel, well, depends, I think. But in Australia, hotel means pub, which I think feels odd. In America, hotel and a pub are different things. There might be a pub in a hotel. But in Australia, especially in smaller towns, a pub, a tavern, often has a second story with just a few rooms that can be rented overnight. The idea being, well, if you had a few too many the night before, maybe you shouldn't be driving anywhere. Maybe you just spend the night there at the second story with the rooms. Yeah, maybe not a bad idea. The hotel is the pub. So what are we left with? Well, then a station is your large farm or ranch, not a place where you're buying beer. And bush then is just the wilderness. No, not going to find beer in the wilderness. Okay, those were places. Now, the final round is miscellaneous. Those are the same ones. Let's try this and see. There we go. Now they're in the chat. Final round. Here we go. Now we can really strine, can't we? Yes. We'll wrap up with these miscellaneous words in 30 seconds. Okay, so are we strining? Yes. So have you heard this song? A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, and Z. Yeah, I was in Canada, in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, and I heard an 8-year-old girl sing that song, ending in Z. And I did a double take and what? That doesn't rhyme. Z. But if you go to England, the last letter in the alphabet is Z. If you're in Canada, the last letter of the alphabet is Z. If you go to New Zealand, the last letter of the alphabet is Z. If you go to India and in English, the last letter of the alphabet is Z. If you go to Jamaica, the last letter of the alphabet is Z. If you go to Australia, the last letter of the alphabet is Z. Who is strange? Yeah, it's us, Americans. We're the ones who say Z. Most everywhere else, it's Z. All right, petrol, of course, refers to petroleum, and that's what they would also say in Britain, gasoline, petrol. Jumper is not a suicide victim, but is a sweater. Oz is Australia, and that means rainbow sneeze. Now, I think that's kind of a fun one. Rainbow sneeze is vomit. Yes. Okay, so we've been practicing speaking Australian. We've been practicing speaking Australian because of this, 3 things, right? So why is it that there's this version of English, Australian English? Well, I think of it in 2 ways. One is just absolute distance. It's many, many miles from England. But the other is through separation from civilization. So think about it. When those first people from Britain arrived to settle Australia, many convicts plus others, and then the ships left, those new settlers of Australia were completely separate from their civilization, completely separated from other English speakers until the next ships arrived. The next ships arrived with other people from Britain, and then those ships left too. And again, those people were isolated, physically separated from other people who spoke English. So sometimes they found new things in Australia. Of course, we've talked about, yeah, sure, that makes sense. They found new things and gave them names. But also some English words evolved. That's what language does. Languages are not just set in stone. Languages evolve and change. Slang words enter the vocabulary. So some English words got changed in Australia for fun or randomly or just coincidence. Something happened and those words got changed. Of course, we know that is also true with American English. American English does not match British English, though that is where we got our language from originally, of course, when we were British colonies. But through separation, that Atlantic Ocean is in between, right? Our language evolved. And even within America, we have variation in language, don't we? We have a very big country in area, so there are considerable distances between places. And so sometimes we have a word in the American South that's a different word than here in the Midwest because of distance and separation. But I wonder now that distance in miles is the same. It's just as far to Australia as it has been, right? But the separation is different because of modern transportation and modern communication. We can get on an airplane and go to Australia. Yeah, okay, it takes 20 hours or so. That's a long day, but it's much better than sailing on a ship for months. But even more so, modern transportation. We can call someone, and we're talking right now to someone in Australia. We could go on Zoom and talk and see someone in Australia right now, real time. So one wonders about the future of language differences. If we want to communicate effectively, efficiently with someone in Australia, wouldn't it be easier to use the same words and not have Australian slang to figure out? So there is an argument that modern communications should prompt languages to have fewer differences. And I think that's an interesting theory. Maybe we will see that happen more often, especially now with things like Zoom, where we can see people and talk to them in real time. Maybe those differences in English across the world, British English, Australian English, American English, New Zealand English, and so forth, maybe they'll become fewer differences and more everybody using the same words. All right, we'll see, maybe. But yes, this is why Australian English has differences from British English. It's because of isolation, miles, but also separation. Okay, but this is also true for biogeography. Biogeography, if we look at the animal life of Australia, we also see some often striking differences because of separation, because Australia has been this large continent, but separated from the world largely, right? It was discovered late by the native peoples. It was discovered late by the Europeans. Well, it was also separate for the development of animal life. For a long, long time, continental drift has pushed it in this separate location. So Australia has some animals that are unique, that are found only in Australia, some animals that are uncommon, and a few can be found other places. And well, it can help make Australia interesting. So for instance, the most famous one I think would be the kangaroo. The kangaroo is like a mammal, but is in a category called marsupial. And of course is famous for the pouch, right? The baby kangaroo called the joey, when it's born, it's not capable of sustaining life by itself. And so it crawls into the mother's pouch and lives there for a while. It gets bigger and more capable, and then eventually can come out and go on its own, right? The wombat is another one of these marsupials. a curious one. And then so is the koala. I was very careful. I did not say koala bear because koalas are not bears. They're not in the bear family in any way. They're in the marsupial category. They just look like teddy bears, right? So yeah, sometimes people just don't think about it or don't know, and they say koala bear. So don't let that be you. It's just the koala. Another category is the monotreme, and the platypus is the most famous in this category. And this is really a weird animal. So it has a beak like a duck. It has a tail like a beaver. It does have fur like mammals typically do. It has webbed feet, and then it lays eggs. Mammals do not lay eggs. That's one of the defining characteristics of mammals, is they bear their own young. They do not lay eggs. Reptiles lay eggs. Birds lay eggs. These are not birds. It's their own category, the monotreme, the platypus. Of course, the natives had known about these for years and years and years, but then eventually, the British got there, and of course, soon enough, they found some of these. So they killed a few platypus and they stuffed them, preserved them, and on the next ships, they sent them back to Britain to scientists to say, look what we have found here in Australia. And the scientists, upon taking a look, thought it was a practical joke. Yes, they actually thought it was a prank. That's in Australia, someone had killed 4 different animals, took parts from 4 different animals, sewed them together to make this bizarre creature. Well, no, it was not a prank. It's just a bizarre creature, the platypus. Sometimes Australia has their own version of animals that we're sort of familiar with too. This is not the coyote, it's kind of their version of the coyote called the dingo or the wild dog. And historically, the dingoes have at times been problems, well, for farmers, specifically for sheep farmers in Australia. And there are many sheep farmers, big sheep ranches. There's more sheep than people in Australia, but a lamb for supper is a great meal for a dingo. Yeah. And so sheep farmers became very frustrated with the dingoes and tried to find a solution. And they built the dingo fence. For hundreds of miles, the dingo fence. And they had sheep ranches on one side of the fence and cattle ranching on the other side of the fence. And they tried to structure it, establish it so that the dingoes were on the cattle ranching side, not on the sheep. The dingoes don't attack the cattle, but the dingo, loves that lamb for supper. The dingo fence. Okay, and then there are exotic species. This is a funny use of the word. At least it seems odd to me. When I hear the word exotic, I think of crazy, wild, unusual, bizarre, something like that. But when you pair it with the word species, that's not what it means. Exotic species, you need to think of the word exit here. Exotic species came from somewhere else. So the kangaroo is not an exotic species in Australia because it's native to Australia. Other things brought to Australia can be exotic. For instance, the South American cane toad is an exotic species in Australia. Now, in this case, it's also, whoa, what the heck is that? That is a huge toad. Well, in Australia, they do raise sugarcane. That is one of the crops in Australia, as well as in South America. And in South America, this toad enjoys living in the sugarcane fields and eating the bugs there. So Australian farmers having problems with bugs in the sugarcane fields heard about this toad, and they imported some of them, hopefully to do the same in their fields. And on the one hand, yes, this has worked pretty well. The sugarcane toad, yeah, eats lots of bugs, and that's fine. On the other hand, nothing really eats the sugarcane toad. So there can be a lot of them. I guess it's not terrible. They're not doing too much trouble. They are eating the bugs, but they have a toxin in their skin. And so if a dingo, let's say, took a bite, they would get this terrible taste in their mouth and probably not taking another bite. If they ate the whole toad, they would probably die from the toxin. So pretty quickly, animals choose not to attack the cane toads. Rabbits. Rabbits are exotic species in Australia. Now, doesn't that sound weird? Rabbits are exotic species. Rabbits seem like very common animals. Well, they were never in Australia until they were brought over from England. And then a bunch of them escaped, got away, and they bred like rabbits. Yes, they bred like rabbits, fast and many. And soon there were rabbits seemingly everywhere. Well, that did turn out to be a problem because they were eating farmers' crops. And so the farmers built another fence, the rabbit-proof fence, as many as 2,000 miles long, structured to keep the rabbits on one side and not the other. They did try some other things. They shot some, yeah, sure. They poisoned some, okay. They brought the fox over from England and let loose a number of foxes. And that helped too, because the foxes had plenty of rabbits to eat. So that helped. Soon you had lots and lots more foxes, but they were eating the rabbits, and foxes don't eat crops, so that was okay. But still, it wasn't enough, and they built this long fence. Well, it also gives me a chance to mention this film, because the name of the film is Rabbit Proof Fence. And it's quite a profound film. Based on a true story, it tells about part of the 20th century when the Australian government policy was to take Aboriginal children, especially if they had a single Aboriginal mother, and take those children away and put them in white people's schools, arguing that the Aboriginal mothers would not be capable of raising their own children. Very racist idea. Very racist idea that lasted for a long time. And in this, based on a true story, 3 girls were taken from their Aboriginal mothers, taken far away to white people's schools. And these 3 girls ran away from those schools. And they knew that their mothers lived next to the rabbit-proof fence, but they didn't know where the school was. So they weren't quite sure how to find their mothers, but they found the fence. So they started following the fence for miles and miles to try to find the location of the fence where they're next to where their mother lived. So it's a very profound and based on a true story film, Rabbit Proof Fence. All right, and yes, soon the fox was almost everywhere in Australia. There's a map showing distribution of fox in Australia. Okay, so this too has the same answer. The distance from other evolving species and this barrier, this ocean barrier that created separation from other parts of the world. Europe and Asia are connected, for instance, so animals can go and develop and evolve historically across Europe and Asia together, moving around. Didn't work for Australia, had this ocean barrier and separation. Okay, and I have for you another acronym, BAIL, Biogeography and Language Evolved. Remember, we had ALAS, Ancient Land and Stable, talking about physical geography, and we had ISLE, I-S-L-E, Isolation, Settlement, Late Exploration. So for each of my three things, I've got an acronym for you, and hopefully if you remember the acronym, you could also explain the topic. Today, it's BAIL, like a bale of hay, Biogeography and Language Evolved. Okay, and then quickly, a little bit, and before I tell you some important things about what's going on. So I just wanted to mention the categories of the Pacific Islands. You're going to get New Zealand in the New Zealand video worksheet, and I'll tell you more about that. We've done Australia now quite a bit, and what's left are the Pacific Islands. So our Pacific Islands come in three categories: Melanesia, Micronesia, Polynesia. I'm sure we all know that micro means small. So Micronesia are small islands. Poly, you may recognize, means many. So Polynesia, many islands. Mela is not as commonly used, but Mela means dark. So these are the dark islands. Okay, Melanesia is going to consist of bigger islands, mainly north of Australia. So Papua New Guinea is the main example there. And the people of Papua New Guinea are dark-skinned, dark-haired people. And that's probably how Melanesia got its name. Papua New Guinea is an interesting circumstance because the whole island is New Guinea, but the whole island is divided in two into the country Papua New Guinea on the eastern side, and then the Indonesian territory, Irian Jaya, on the western side. That Indonesian territory, well, Indonesia is not in the Western world. Indonesia is in Southeast Asia in the Eastern world. So this class is the Western world, so we don't concern ourselves with the western half of the island, New Guinea. But the eastern half, plus a little bit more, is Papua New Guinea. New Caledonia, another example in Melanesia. Micronesia, small islands, and you know, it probably makes sense to cooperate a bit. So in Micronesia, where we have small islands, we do have some cooperation, like the Federated States of Micronesia. Work together when otherwise you'd be very small by yourself. Micronesia is basically the set of islands north of Melanesia. Polynesia, many islands, is basically everything east of all the rest. East of Melanesia, east of Micronesia, east of Australia, basically everything over there is Polynesia, including the French pieces called French Polynesia, including Hawaii. And we remember that Hawaii has this dual circumstance, being in Polynesia, but also being politically part of the United States, and then plus politically in North America. The same sort of thing is true for Easter Island. Well, first of all, remember Easter Island because they have these bizarre stone statues on them, created ages ago by the natives with no modern technology, no modern tools to do that, and no modern means of transportation, yet they did move them in different locations. It's a pretty amazing story. But Easter Island now is part of the country Chile. Chile is on South America, so Easter Island is in part in Latin America and the Caribbean, our classification, because it's part of Chile and South America. But it is very far west of Chile, and it is in Polynesia, so it is in the Pacific realm. So like Hawaii, Easter Island has this dual position. All right, that was quick, but I wanted to make sure I said something about those island